Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Om Vishnu Paraparamhamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shtotra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Paraparamhamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shtotra Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Premshika Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Sameta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Go Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, today's the appearance of Yamuna. What's his name? Ramanujacharya. Sorry. So I'll read from the Samadhi book. Let's start with that. So Sri Ramanujacharya, he appeared near Madras, South India, in family of Vedic scholars. And Sri Vaishnavas say he was an incarnation of Lakshman. The word Ramanuja means a follower of Ram. And he received his name because of Lakshman always follows and serves his brother, Lord Ramachandra. A boy of amazing wit, Ramanuja quickly learned Sanskrit, logic, and the Vedas. He took Diksha and married at age 16. Ramanuja studied with the Mayavadi guru, Yadava Prakash, to master Mayavadi philosophy and defeat it. When the brilliant Ramanuja kept refuting his Mayavadi arguments, Yadava Prakash tried to murder him. Unsuccessful, Yadava Prakash expelled Ramanuja from the ashram. Before leaving, Ramanuja completely defeated his guru's theory of oneness and no distinction. Ramanuja explained, while a certain unity can be seen in the interrelatedness of all things, still everything within the universe has its own distinct reality. Pearls are strung on the thread share unity. Collectively they form an organic whole, a necklace. Still, each individual pearl has its own unique qualities. While spirit, matter, and God may be seen as one organic whole, each has its unique qualities. Therefore, Shankara's principle of absolute oneness cannot stand. Rather, the principle of unity characterized by different qualities must be accepted. Sometime later, Yadava Prakash met Kuresh, Ramanuja's student with a photographic memory. Quoting Shrutis, the best of Vedic proof, Kuresh convinced him that the Brahman has transcendental form and qualities coming from the ultimate reality, the supreme absolute truth known as Lord Narayana. Ramanuja initiated anyone regardless of caste using the Pancha Samskara purification method. He turned Shudras into Brahmanas. He established that the position of a Vaishnava surpasses all social limitations and considerations. Identifying himself as a servant, Ramanuja taught the worship of the Vaishnavas. Several times, envious Brahmanas tried to poison Ramanuja. And to teach detachment to one disciple, Ramanuja staged the following demonstration. He told the disciple to create confusion among the sannyasis by switching their clothes and bathing God. When the sannyasis, who were big scholars and renunciates, started wearing each other clothes, a big argument began. The disciple could plainly see that the renunciates were attached to some cloth. Then Ramanuja sent the disciple to the home of his Grihastha disciple, Dhanur Das. Ramanuja engaged Dhanur Das in the temple to ensure he wouldn't be home. And following Ramanuja's order, the disciple began stealing jewelry from Dhanur Das's chaste wife who was sleeping. After the disciple took the ornaments from one side of her body, she suddenly turned over. The startled disciple fled through the window, but he waited outside to witness the reaction of Dhanur Das. Upon returning home, Dhanur Das talked with his wife. He said, "I'm worried that the temple needs money." The wife said, "Excuse me. What makes you think that?" asked Dhanur Das. "Because while I slept on, one of the temple devotees came through the window and began stealing the jewelry from my body. To go that far, I think those poor saints must desperately need money. And what did you do while he was stealing your jewelry?" "I turned over, but he fled through the window." "Why did you do that?" said Dhanur Das. "I didn't mean to scare him. I only turned over so that he could take the jewelry from the other side of my body as well." Dhanur Das rebuked his wife. "If you were not so affected by false ego, you would have given him all your jewels. Now what shall we do? We have failed miserably." His wife lamented, "You're right, it's only my pride that kept me from surrendering everything. How will we ever make any advancement?" Watching all this, Ramanuja's disciple was astonished at the humility and surrender of these Grihastha devotees. Ramanuja explained the meaning of these two events, the sannyasi's cloth and the wife's jewels. The sannyasis were so attached to some ragged bits of cloth that they fought over it, but the Grihasthas were detached, even from costly jewels, if they were needed for the Lord's service. Ramanujacharya founded the Sri Sampradaya of one of the four major Vaishnava Sampradayas, Brahma, Shri, Kumar and Rudra. This Sampradaya propounds the Vedanta philosophy of Visistadvaitavada, qualified monism. Gaudiya and Sri Vaishnavas share many teachings and practices. The Gaudiyas took Ramanuja's explanation of God and a Jiva verbatim. The principle of God is like a blazing fire, while the living soul or the Jiva is like a spark, a small part of God. Both accept three classes of Jivas: eternally liberated, forever bound, freed by devotion and sadhana. Ramanuja taught serving God in Vaikuntha with awe and reverence in Dasya Ras, mood of master and servant. Gaudiya Vaishnavas teach confidential service in Madhurya Ras to Radha Madhava within the groves of Vrindavan. Ramanujacharya wrote many famous commentaries on the Upanishads, Puranas, Bhagavad Gita, Sri Bhasya. His commentary on Vedanta presents a formidable challenge to Sankaracharya's impersonal commentary. To this day, the Sri Vaishnava disciplic succession from Ramanuja continues to uphold the traditions of deity worship and philosophy systemized by the founder, his Samadhi in Sri Rangam. So that's something about Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana and unto Narayana Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mada Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prashabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart of the most completely destroyed, and love and service unto the personality of God is praised with the transcendental songs established as an irrevocable fact. So, right now we're going to start reading from a new chapter. We are reading Canto number 6, chapter 9 and text number 1. But before I start reading the text, there's a description of the chapter, and we'll start with that. The chapter is called Appearance of the Demon Vritrasura. So I'll read the description. As described in this chapter, Indra, the king of heaven, killed Vishvarupa, and therefore Vishvarupa's fathers performed the yajna to kill Indra. When Vritrasura appeared from the yajna, the demigods in fear sought shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and glorified him. Because of affection for demons, Vishvarupa secretly supplied them the remnants of yajna. When Indra learned about this, he beheaded Vishvarupa, but he later regretted killing Vishvarupa because Vishvarupa was a Brahman. Although competent to neutralize the sinful reactions for killing a Brahmana, Indra did not do so. Instead, he accepted the reactions, and later he distributed these reactions among the land, water, trees, and women in general. Since the land accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions, a portion of the land turned into desert. The trees were also given 1/4 of the sinful reactions, and therefore they drip sap, which is prohibited for drinking. Because women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions, they are untouchable during their menstrual period. Since water was also infested with sinful reactions, when bubbles appear in water, it cannot be used for any purpose. After Vishvarupa was killed, his father, Tvashta, performed a sacrifice to kill Indra. And unfortunately, if mantras are chanted irregularly, they yield an opposite result. This happened when Tvashta performed this yajna. While performing a sacrifice to kill Indra, Tvashta chanted a mantra to increase Indra's enemies. But because he chanted the mantra wrong, the sacrifice produced an asura named Vritrasura, of whom Indra was the enemy. When Dhritarashtra was generated from the sacrifice, his fierce features made the whole world afraid, and his personal effulgence diminished even the power of the demigods. Finding no other means of protection, the demigods began to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the enjoyer of all the results of sacrifice, who is supreme throughout the entire universe. The demigods all worshipped him because ultimately no one but him can protect a living entity from fear and danger. Seeking shelter of a demigod instead of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead is compared to trying to cross the ocean by grasping the tail of a dog. A dog can swim, but that does not mean that one can cross the ocean by grasping a dog's tail. Being pleased with the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead advised them to approach the Dvijya to beg him for the bones of his own body. The Dvijya would comply with the request of the demigods, and with the help of his bones, Dhritarashtra could be killed. So now, chapter 9, text number 1. We'll recite Sanskrit first. And then chant. Shuka uvacha tasyasan visvarupasya shiramsi trini bharata somapitham sura pitham anadam iti Shushruma Shri Shuka Uvacha Tasya Sanvishvarupasya Shiram Sitrini Bharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam iti Shushruma Shri Shuka Uvacha Tasya Sanvishvarupasya Shiram Sitrini Bharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam iti Shushruma Shri Shuka Uvacha Tasya Sanvishvarupasya Shiram Sitrini Bharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam iti Shushruma Swarupasya Shiram Sitrini Bharata Tatramita Shri Shuka Uvacha Tasyam Vishvarupasya Shiram Sitrini Bharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam iti Shushruma Shri Shuka Uvacha. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please go ahead. Shuka Uvacha Tasya Shiram Sitrini Bharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam iti Shushruma Shri Shuka Uvacha Tasya Sanvishvarupasya
Shiram Sitrini Bharata
Shiram Sitrini Bharata
Somapitam Surapitam Anadamiti Shushruma
Shushruma Okay, so Shri Shuka Uvacha. Shri Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, Tasya, of him, Asan, there were, Vishvarupasya, Vishvarupa, the priest of the demigods, Shiramsi, heads, Trini, three, Bharata, or Maharaj Parikshit, Somapitam, used for drinking the beverage Soma, Surapitam, used for drinking wine, Ana Adam, used for eating, Iti, thus, Shushruma, I have heard by the Parampara system. Now the translations and comments by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Ki Jai. Shri Śukadeva Gosvāmī continued, Vishvarupa, who was engaged as the priest of the demigods, had 3 heads. He used one to drink the beverage somaras, another to drink wine, and the third to eat food. O King Parikshit, thus I've heard from the authorities. Purport. One cannot directly perceive the kingdom of heaven, its king and other inhabitants, or how they perform their various engagements, for no one can go to heavenly planets. Although modern scientists have invented many powerful space vehicles, they cannot even go to the moon, not to speak of other planets. But by direct experience, one cannot learn anything beyond the range of human perception. One must hear from authorities. Therefore, Śukadeva Gosvāmī, a great personality, says, what I am describing to you, O King, is what I have heard from authoritative sources. This is the Vedic system. The Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, because it must be received by being heard from authorities. It is beyond the realm of our false experimental knowledge. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Gunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandha Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhye Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're beginning a new chapter, the pastimes of King Vritasura, and in the commentary, Srila Prabhupada is speaking about hearing, the sound that is beyond the perception of our material senses, and mostly in this past chapter, we also was hearing about the mantras, Narayana Kavacha mantra. So Shruti means that this knowledge has to be received from by the oral reception from the authorized source. And the Vedas, they instruct us that if we would like to understand spiritual topics, we need to hear from Guru. Just like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tadvidhi pranipatena priprashnena sevaya padakshanti te gyanam gyaninas tattvadarshanaha. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire of him submissively, and try to render service unto him. And the self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he understands the truth, he has seen the truth. And besides, this knowledge, actually it destroys illusion and also it protects us. So mantras should be received through the authorized guru, and the disciple must satisfy the guru. in all respects, and also surrender unto his lotus feet. And he also has to show the symptoms of being humble, humility. That is the best position of a Vaishnava. That is the safest position for us. But then the question might come, who is the guru? Who is the bona fide teacher? And in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto it is described that guru is the one who has realized the conclusions of the scriptures by deliberation. And not only that, but is also able to teach these conclusions onto others. And so this is the person we surrender to. A bona fide spiritual master, he is expert in knowing the scriptures, called Nishnatam. He's deeply experienced in authoritative scriptures, authorized Vedic literatures. And he also has practical understanding of this, and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not by his imagination or his ideas, his concoctions. No, he's actually mature in this knowledge. That's why he's able to teach this to others by his own example. So, and the Vedic literatures, they actually direct manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that come here to the material world to help us understand our position. And of course, the first thing that we need to learn is who we are. This is the knowledge of the Atma, Atma Gyan. And then we can try to learn about God, about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, there is also a text in the 9th chapter. Krishna says, Ashrada dhana purusha dharmasya saparantapa aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani. Those who are not faithful on this path of devotional service, they cannot understand me, they cannot attain me or conquer the foes. But they simply just return to the repeated cycle of birth and death in this material world. Therefore, the spiritual master has to come and awaken our spiritual consciousness to engage us in eternal devotional activity, eternal devotional service. He should wake us up. He should, just like when we, sometimes in our teenage years, when we about to go to classes, to school, and we don't want to wake up, so the parents, they come and they wake us up. You got to get up. And I remember in my times I was mostly living with my mother, and she would be very gentle about waking me up. You know, sometimes I wouldn't actually wake up. She was so busy, rushing to get to work. But I remember one time I was in the village with my grandmother. That's another story. One time she actually went to the kitchen and got a cold pitcher of water and dropped it on me, poured it on me. Because she wanted me to get up. And I was so shocked, so I had no choice. I had to get up. So similarly, the spiritual master has to wake up us in the sense also. Maybe. Yeah, so in Sanskrit, guru means heavy. He has to be heavier than ourselves. So, like Srila Prabhupada would say that if I'm light, and if I accept somebody who is light, I cannot learn from that person. I have to learn from somebody who is heavier than me. And then also, this knowledge, we're talking about this transcendental knowledge, this is, beyond the universe. It's not within material, it's not material knowledge, it's transcendental knowledge. And we cannot go to the end of the universe, what to speak of the spiritual world. Thus we have to understand that to acquire that knowledge is not possible just by our material senses. And Srila Prabhupada was also mentioning that in the commentaries about, he was talking about Shruti. And in one class, he was saying that if we want to travel to another planets, we have to travel by yantra ruddhani, by yantra, this different body. This body, we cannot go to the spiritual realms. It's not possible. But if we have the desire to go to the spiritual or even to heavenly planets, we just simply pray to Krishna. And if we following the necessary procedure, then we can obtain that opportunity and go to the heavenly planets. But if we're just simply trying to get to those planets from this earthly planets is just a waste of time. It's a useless waste of energy, of resources. So we should not try to do that. And so spiritual knowledge means that we have a subject matter of discussion. It means that we're talking about Krishna. And that is simply wonderful to speak about Krishna. You know, we have ears that have been given by God to us. So if we just simply sit down and hear about Krishna, that makes us very happy. Matter of fact, for devotees, it's the most favorite thing to do, to hear about Krishna. It's in the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada, I think in the comments, explains that we should be daily engaged, 24 hours, hearing and doing something for Krishna, glorifying His qualities, His pastimes, all the time. And like this, our hearts and our souls will be fully submerged in Krishna. And we take pleasure in doing so. Machita madgata prana bodhyanta parasparam kathayantas chamam nityam tushanti charamanchacha. Krishna says that this is the best thing for us to do. We become blissful, we feel very satisfied when we discuss about Krishna. And then in return, Krishna gives us the intelligence and how we can understand and come to Krishna. Dadami buddhiyogam tam. And after this, He dissipates all the darkness in our hearts with a shining lamp of knowledge. It's simply because Krishna is Param Brahma Paramdam, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan, Purusham Shashvatam Divyam, Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum. Krishna is the Supreme Personality. He is the ultimate abode. He's the purest, the absolute truth. He's the eternal and transcendental. And He is original person. He's unborn and the greatest, Vibhum. And now, to speak about the sound has actually a very tremendous effect, especially if we hear in certain sounds together, like in a Bhagavatam class. It can actually, in a sense, unite us to that sound. And there are two types of sounds that we can find in this life. First sound is prakrita sound, the sound of the material sound, the objects falling from our hands, or clapping, or different cars that are, always you can hear them from in here. Or this funny thing that the trucks, big trucks, they take away the trash here in PB. They have a very interesting schedule because they always come when you're trying to take rest. They come and they make a lot of noise, and so there's a different material sounds we hear all the time, every day. But there's also the opposite to material sounds, aprakrita sound. Those are spiritual sounds of Vedic mantras. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras, and by sound we can end the process of material entanglement. We can obtain liberation and understanding of Krishna. This is called Anavriti Shabdat, the sound. It is in the Vedanta Sutra. It is said that this is what started the material manifestation, and this is what can end our material entanglement here. An example given in the previous chapter is the sound of Narayana Kavacha prayer. For certain mantras, there needs to be qualification. We cannot just start chanting those mantras and get the full benefit, or get any benefit. Like with the Gayatri mantra, for instance, we have to be on the platform of sattva. We have to have brahminical qualities, and it has to be received from Guru also. We can't just start chanting on our own. Like sometimes in book distribution, I met some people who would tell me, I chant this mantra, Gayatri, it's called. Interesting. So, yeah, for certain mantras, like it's described here about the Narayana Kavacha prayer, there are some preliminary procedures that not all people are ready for. For instance, you have to be very clean, you have to wash your hands and perform Achmana procedures, and then you chant the different mantras in different parts of your body, then touch the kusha grass, and then sit very silently and gravely like that. Not all people would be able to do that. But in this age, we are very fortunate because we can also chant spiritual sounds. And for that, there's actually no qualification required. It's the chanting of Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna mantra. We can all chant Hare Krishna and be very happy, very glorious. Maybe we can chant one mantra right now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Anybody is qualified to participate. So, previously we discussed how King Indra, he failed to respect his spiritual teacher Brihaspati when he entered into the assembly of different demigods who were praising him. And after that, he actually realized what's happening and he regretted about this act. Out of pride and lack of knowledge, he did that. It's actually taught that if we see somebody more senior, we should always be very happy to see them. And of course, if it's a spiritual teacher, we should offer respect like this. And so demons attacked demigods, and they were able to take over. And then demigods in despair, they came to Lord Brahma asking, what should they do? Sorry? They're all bleeding and injured, right? Yeah, bleeding and injured. Yes. So, and it was advised for them that they should accept a teacher, Vishvarupa, as a guru. And even though he was younger in age, it's actually in the Vedic, according to the Vedic mantras, if somebody is more advanced, it's okay to accept them as a teacher. So Vishvarupa, out of great respect for demigods, he became their guru, and he performed the necessary priestly activities very enthusiastically and with great attention. And then he taught King Indra how to chant this Narayana Kavacha mantra. It's a protective prayer that protected him from demons and took away their power. So this mantra works like a shield. It protects you by various forms of the Lord, like Matsya protects you in water, Vamana in land. It's described in the Bhagavatam. Varaha in streets. In Srimad, it protects you in difficult places, like on the streets. And then Ramachandra protects you in foreign countries. And then also it protects you during different times of the day. Like in the morning, it protects you by Damodar, in the afternoon by Madhusudana with his bow, and then in the evening by Shivatsadam, the Lord who bears Shivats on his chest. And also it protects you by different weapons. Sudarshana disc, it goes into all directions and burns everything to ashes. And then we have the club. It produces sparks of fire as thunderbolts, very powerful sparks. Then you have the conch that creates fearful vibrations and causes your enemies to be very fearful, to feel very fearful. And sword cuts soldiers to pieces. Then you have the shield that covers your enemies' sinful eyes. So different weapons. Also different energies and attributes, like glorification of Lord's name and form. It protects us from the influence of bad planets, meteors, ghosts, spirits, and sins. Also from ferocious animals and human beings that are evil. So there are a lot of great benefits to this mantra. And to wear Narayana Kavacha is also very beneficial because you will be able to conquer the demons. Then anybody who sees or touches is immediately free from fears and also any dangers. And it protects you from government, plunderers, demons, or disease. So, an example of how this mantra worked was also given in the end of the last chapter. In this chapter, this Brahman named Kaushika used this mantra when he gave up his body in the desert by mystical powers. And later, there was this king of Gandharvaloka. His name is Chitrarat. He was actually passing on his airplane over that spot where the Brahmanas left his body. And then all of a sudden, he suddenly just felt the force was actually dragging him down. He was going head first down with his airplane down onto this spot where the Brahmana used the mantra and left his body. And eventually, he had to he was ordered by the great sages named Vaikilyas to throw the Brahman's bones in the nearby river, Saraswati River, and he had to bathe in that river before he returned to his abode. So anyone who employs this mantra or hears about it with faith and veneration, when afraid because of any condition in the material world, is immediately freed from all dangers. And he's worshipped by all living entities, it is described. This mantra helped Lord Indra to conquer the Asuras, and then afterwards enjoy the opulence of the three worlds. But as we would be reading about, it didn't last a long time. Because, this incident, or it's a great pastime with the King Vitarasura. Of course, I'm not going to go into much details about this pastime, because since we're going to be hearing this pastime for, I think it's 5 chapters, we're going to be discussing this. It's a very prominent pastime in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Dvijya Prabhu was saying yesterday that after all these wonderful things that happened, wonderful praise to Vishvarupa when he surrendered to demigods and became their guru, then King Indra actually killed him. He cut off his heads. He had 3 heads, and he cut them off. It's simply because he was offering oblations on behalf of the demigods during this sacrifice. Demons, excuse me. Yes, and isn't that because his parental, his mother's side, she was a demon? Yeah. So and Indra felt that he was actually he was afraid that the same will happen. You know, the demons, they will come and take over again. So therefore, he just cut his head from his shoulders. And then at that time, his father, he ordered, his name is Twashtas, he chanted mantras during the fire sacrifice, and he invited an asura to kill Lord Indra, but because he mispronounced mantras, what happened was, instead of that demon killing Indra, the opposite took place, that the Indra will kill him, like that. So this is because he mispronounced one of the mantras during this. You have to be careful, very careful. But of course, we're not trying to learn the different mantras as was practiced before. We just simply chant Hare Krishna. In this, as long as we're trying to do it sincerely and chant to our ability, it's accepted. So this Vishvarupa, he had three heads, and it's described here that one head was meant for drinking somaras, and it transformed into kapinjala, a Franklin partridge. The next head that was meant for drinking wine was transformed into kalavinka. It became a sparrow. And the third one meant for eating, it became a titiri, a common partridge. So it's interesting. And another thing I want to mention is it's really interesting because Lord Indra, after he killed this Brahman, he was so powerful that he could neutralize the sinful reactions from killing the Brahman. But he instead, what he did, he accepted the burden of these reactions. And he suffered for 1 year, but then he divided these sinful reactions between earth, water, trees, and women. It's very interesting. I've first heard this when we were in Tucson, in Arizona. We were going to a hike in Tucson to see the famous, I think they call it Sagoro National Park, these cactuses they have in Arizona. And we saw it's a desert. Many people talk about how difficult it is to live there, especially in the summer. It's very dry. And also that it's in a desert, the population is not very big, because it is described that when Earth accepted this 1/4 of the sinful reactions, desert became a place where the sinful people would be born into, and people who killed Brahmins in the past, they would be born in the desert. But the boon for this was for the planet Earth, was that in the Earth the ditches would be filled automatically, and then also there were trees who accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions, and for the trees, the sap was visible and it was flowing from those trees. You cannot. It's like a nutrient, in the liquid nutrient in the tree, but we as humans we cannot eat it, take it ourselves. It's not good. But then the boon would be that when we cut branches and twigs from the tree, it would grow back immediately. And then women accepted 1/4 of the reaction from that also. And the signs were the menstruation, manifest every month. And also, the boon would be that they could enjoy lusty desires continuously, even during pregnancy. And then also was the water, who accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions. And the water, we saw that also in this on that hike in that park. There was this like one little stream of river, coming down, and it was like full of bubbles, like so foamy. I've never seen anything like that. And yeah, this is the reactions, these bubbles and foam, and the water becomes undrinkable. But the boon would be that the water would increase in volume any substances that it mixes with. So yeah, to conclude, this pastimes of Vrita Asura is one of the most prominent pastimes in the 6th canto, along with the pastimes of Ajamala that we discussed some time ago. And these two pastimes, they describe the mechanism how actually Krishna fully sustains our life. It's sustained by the mercy of the Lord. And the holy name always saves us. It saves Ajamal, and now this mantra, the Narayana Kavacha mantra, also saved Lord Indra. And he was victorious in the battle with the demon, but actually only externally. Because King Indra, he went to heaven. The Brahmins took him back to heaven, but the demon, he actually Vritarasura, he didn't go to heaven. He just went to Krishna. His soul went back to Godhead. So, and also another thing, when the battlefield was over, this Chandala woman with the tuberculosis is a sin personified. She chased down King Indra, and he went to live in this lake. It's called Manasa Saravara Lake, and he stayed there for 1,000 years. And he was hiding in the stem of the lotus flower for so long. And what he was thinking about is actually was meditating on Lord Vishnu, and he was trying to go through the atonement. He was always meditating and thinking of Lord Vishnu. And so therefore, eventually, he regained his position in heaven. So yeah, I guess that's it for today. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions.
Good morning. I have a couple of questions about the bubbles in the water. The streams in the Rockies, there's a lot of bubbles. But I can ask that after the class, but I just wanted to thank you for the class. This is your first class, and your smile is contagious. It's an asset. I want to thank you for that. There's emotion I can hear, but I can also see, so it adds to the sound vibration of the whole class, your smile.
Thank you so much.
Actually, we have to correct that. It is not his first class. It's my fault. It's his first Bhagavatam class. He's been given some Saturday night classes, right?
Yeah,
warm-up classes.
Warm-up class.
I have a question. In the Narayan Kavacha, there's one line that says, "May Lord Buddhadev protect me from activities opposed to Vedic principles and from laziness that causes one to madly forget the Vedic principles of knowledge and ritualistic action." Can we assume that he didn't chant that properly, or he was spacing out when he chanted that line, because he certainly forgot those principles and cut off the heads of his guru? I think we can.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. He must have forgotten. Oh yeah, I think Dana Mataji had a question from yesterday, and maybe Vijay Krishna.
Yes, I have a question, but Mother Dhanabari, she's not here today.
Okay, hope she comes back. She comes back.
Can you take my question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Prabhu, if I may ask, what is your spiritual name?
My name is Dvijya Das.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Let me just clarify, because you probably don't know what that means. Dvijya Mani is a name for Lord Chaitanya, the jewel of the twice born. Just to let you know. Haribol.
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. You're very kind. Thank you very much for that. So, Dvijya Mani, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Is that correct?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so my question is related to Sri Śukadeva Gosvāmī in the translation, saying that to King Parikshit that the following quote, "Thus I have heard from authorities," unquote. So based on this quote, my question is, what is the advantage of hearing from an authority?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's the only way actually to understand spiritual topics, if we hear from authorities. And I described that the authorities, like for instance the spiritual master, he's mature in the Vedic knowledge, so it's easy for him to teach this knowledge unto his disciples. And also, I mentioned the text in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is being advised to approach the spiritual master directly and inquire from him submissively, and also try to satisfy your spiritual master. That's how you can impart and understand the spiritual knowledge. Because when a spiritual teacher obtains the real knowledge, he can teach you this knowledge, and you will never fall into illusion. And yeah, Krishna, he says that this knowledge, the living beings, they are part of me. So he says they're mine. So even the most sinful people, when they approach the spiritual master, they can be, he explains in the Bhagavad Gita, situated just like on a boat of transcendental knowledge, and they can easily cross over if they surrender to the Guru. So the benefit is that we're not misguided, we are free from illusion, and we're able to understand the real truth practically, and also become realized in this as well as in the same way as your spiritual teacher. Because this knowledge is like a fire; it turns everything to ashes, as well as all the disqualifications, qualities that are not allowing us due to the conditional stage, and also the past reactions. All of this is burned to ashes, Krishna explains. But we need to render service, inquire, and we need to be very humble. We need to fully be engaged and accept a spiritual teacher, accept Diksha initiation. That's what I understand.
Yes, Dvijya Mani.
Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
Dvijya Mani, Prabhu, you gave me the exact answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the Viru Prabhu has something.
Well, I think you pretty well covered it, but there's one point I don't know if you're emphasizing enough, and that is that the knowledge that we're seeking here is transcendental, which means it's beyond the range of mundane senses and mind.
Yeah.
So unless you receive it from a source that has transcended and a realized soul, then it's going to be saturated with mundane effects. And that's why Prabhupada, in his introduction, the preface to the Bhagavad Gita, he emphasized how there's so many translations of the Bhagavad Gita. They may be accurate, according to the dictionary, but because it's not given and explained by someone who's actually realized Vigyan as opposed to just Gyan, they didn't have the desired effect, namely to inspire people to surrender to Krishna and change their entire life. And I can attest to that. I mean, as I often mention, I read a Bhagavad Gita, little, translations only, and it was interesting, but it just went on my shelf next to the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Autobiography of Yogi and all the other books I was reading, and it just, didn't really. But once I was, chanting and reading Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and so forth, it was life-changing. It has, So that's the real thing. Is this idea is adhokshaja. Krishna said hokshaja, means he's defeats any attempt to understand him by empirical knowledge. That's what that word means. Yeah. And therefore we need this transcendental source of knowledge, which is coming from parampara, which is immediately coming from our preceptor. So.
And Ravindra Prabhu, if I may, in order for me to become blessed by the desired effect, which is not different from full surrender, then I do need to receive the knowledge from the authorized disciplic succession.
Yeah. And this is one of the great values of Srila Prabhupada's books, because as soon as you open them, no matter what your state is, if you read it and you're actually receiving the knowledge, you're getting the knowledge from the transcendental source, even if you're not formally initiated. I'm not, diminishing the importance of that, but that phenomenon of actually getting transcendental knowledge from a pure source is there through Prabhupada's books. That's why he was so, and his spiritual master was so eager to print the books through the medium. So that's the great value. The books are meant to, give you impetus and pique your interest, and then bring you into an association eventually to take, initiation. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Vijay.
Thank you very much.
This knowledge is called aparusheya. This knowledge is called aparusheya, right? This aparusheya, transcendental, superhuman. And for instance, sometimes also we distribute books and I meet people who say that, well, I became self-realized because I take different, substances, they say. But how can you become transcendentally situated if you take a material substance, So we need to understand that the source has to be also transcendental. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mani Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.